Hey, it's Harry. You're about to listen to Building, the podcast charting our journey to starting 1225, the audience first growth marketing agency. We want our podcast to be a very open and transparent look around the journey of starting an agency, and you're about to listen to one of the very first episodes where we haven't even decided the agency name, so you'll notice that does not get mentioned throughout these early episodes. We hope you enjoy listening.
I've not seen you that nervous before, unless it's on the first tee at Brampton, ready to start around. Mate, I was watching your hands. Your hands were literally shaking so much.
This is, I think, what is going to resonate so much with the market we want to target is that systematic growth that we want to talk about is what we now need to perform, right? Like, we will be our first case study of...
This is going to be probably the most weird 3 months of the entire journey that we'll go on, I think, because we're in the grey area now. It's not black and white, it's grey. Hello and welcome back. So today was the day. We caught up yesterday, the evening before, handing in our notices at well-paid, well-engaging jobs. And today we had the task of handing our notices in and explaining kind of why. It was a difficult conversation, but Harry, how did you think it went?
I think, like, in hindsight, we had nothing to worry about. And I think it's interesting when you think about what that worry was as well, right? Like, I was thinking back yesterday after we recorded, thinking, like, do we sound like we don't have confidence in our convictions and confidence in, like, what we want to produce and what we want to build? And it wasn't that at all, right? It was fear of a difficult conversation, which is something that we actively encourage our consultants and our account managers to not do, right? We always say, don't avoid that difficult conversation. And for once, we did take our own advice. Like, we did it how it should have been done, regardless of how painful we thought it would be. Looking back on this morning now, like, it went as well as you could expect. I think the people we were speaking to were incredibly encouraging and understanding. And I think understand that it's a good thing, right? And mutually beneficial. And from that perspective, really good. But I think if we want to go into the story, I think there's learnings that can be taken is probably the best way to put it. So I think if we think about how that day went, I think it's important to probably start from the beginning, right? So we get to the office nice and early. 8 o'clock was when we got there. Mate, the office was closed. Nobody there. Walk upstairs. What do we see? Darkness. Pitch black. And I say to you, there's no one here, mate. What do we do? It's like, it's fine. We'll get in. We'll make ourselves tea, coffee, and be ready to go. Try to open the door. What's happened? When did we put a lock on the door? Were you aware of that?
Apparently it was put into our Slack channels and we must have missed that completely.
Wow,
because we don't go in the office that often, to be fair. So
yeah, to be fair, normally, like, if there's something office related, I would ignore it. But yeah, so there was a lock on the door. There was like a lock box next to the door. I mean, your guess was as good as mine as to what that password would be. So we had to wait for somebody else to arrive to let us in, which already got me off to a nervy start. Send a Slack message to those that we wanted to speak to set up the meeting. And we went into the meeting room around 8:30, right, for the call. It's safe to say we were probably both nervous and our nerves were outputting themselves in different ways.
I've not seen you that nervous before, unless it's on the first tee at Brampton, ready to start around. Mate, I was watching your hands. Your hands were literally shaking so much. And I think when you started this and kind of explained that process and that conversation, fronting up and stuff, yeah, I agree. I think business meetings are different and we're a lot more confident because we have confidence in ourselves. However, I think this straddled the line between personal and business because we've worked with these guys for you, 6 years today, and for me, for 4.5. And we've learned an incredible amount from those people. And regardless of what we do, it did feel like we were letting them down a little bit. And that's where the nerves came from. You don't want them to have a bad impression of you. And I think the best thing that came from this conversation was I think they respected it, and I think they were grateful that we did it when we did it. as well. So for me, that was it. We'll come on to our reactions after it as well. So, but it's just the nerves. Like, why were we so nervous?
I don't know. Like when you really think about it, there's nothing to be nervous about, right? Like we did everything right. We gave the notice that we needed to give. We explained our decision, our rationale, and ultimately, it's credit to where we were that we were even in a position to do this. Like I wasn't ready 3 years ago, the first time round. The only reason I was ready is because of the exposure that we got where we are, right? Like we bring people in all the time from different agencies, and not to slander any other agencies because that's not what's happening here. It's just every company and every business is run differently. We do give exposure, I guess, to things like sales processes, to operational challenges, to P&Ls, profitability, all those kind of things much earlier on in career development. So like you have consultants that you're giving capacity management to, as an example, at the minute. If that wasn't a thing and wasn't a part of the culture, there's no way we'd feel as ready as we are now. And when we really think about it, the chances are that this venture that we're going on now is going to be one of the most well-run operationally startups that to ever exist in the agency world because of the exposure. Our challenges are in different places, but it's credit to the team there. And I think that, again, like you said, is why it was so hard. It was that line, wasn't it, between personal and professional, which was hard to take, but I'm really glad we did it. So I think maybe we should go on to our reactions. Brendan, do you want to speak a little bit? Because obviously I think what's important to say is I stayed around for maybe 2-3 minutes afterwards. And by the time I came out of that meeting room, you were gone. I thought you would have been waiting for me so we could at least like give each other a luck. You disappeared.
Yeah, I had to go outside. I needed to get some fresh air and just calm down, take a few deep breaths, because it was just like the culmination. It's something that we've been talking about pretty much every day for at least a month. Like, oh, how's this going to work out? What are we going to say? What are we going to do? And I've got to be honest, I was pretty numb after that. For most of the day, I was numb. It hadn't sunk in. It really hadn't. Because I think there are some changes going on at the agency, and we kind of agreed to basically, okay, we've told you, we notified you, we're going to park it for a week. We're going to pick it up next week to let the changes happen. And I think I'm in that state of limbo. Gradually, as I've gone on throughout the day, I've been like, okay, yeah, I can calm down a bit. And then I'm starting to get excited about the journey that we're going to take, especially over the next 3 months. It's going to be pretty leery with basically working two jobs. I mean, I'm also a dad. I've got a household. I've got a son to look after. So got a lot of work to do. I'm looking forward to the challenge as well. And I think that's now where the nerves are going. So I'm nervous about the next stage of the journey, excited at the same time. And I don't know, I was expecting like this watershed moment where I was, great, I can calm down, I can chill out a little bit. But it's also, and you said it to me, we popped over to the cafe, didn't we, and got a coffee and just kind of had a chat for 5-10 minutes. And it's like, yeah, okay, right. Well, the one fact is we've got to do this now. We've got no other option. The notice is in. We're going to go. We're going to go and do this. So this is where the real work starts.
It does. I think, obviously, whilst trying to be respectful of the roles that we're in, like we have started the process a little bit. So it's not like this is day one, but it feels like day one. It feels like we now need to get that momentum building, and our efforts need to turn to sales and positioning and all those kind of things. But when we break it down, we know what needs to be done. And this is, I think, what is going to resonate so much with the market we want to target is that systematic growth that we want to talk about is what we now need to perform, right? Like we will be our first case study of can we make that growth systematic. So we obviously have the goal that we've set ourselves of having 1 to 3 clients by the time we officially launch in July, which means that we only really have 2 pillars we need to pull in our growth journey, right? Marketing, sales. If we can make that a fairly formulaic, fairly systematic process, while of course layering some creativity about how we do it on top, right, we'll be able to do it for all of our clients as well. And I'm very confident, but it does feel real. I think if we're turning the conversation back a little bit to how I felt afterwards, I think I was in a very different position to you. I had been dreading that conversation so much, obviously, because given the structural dynamic we have at the minute, it was my job to lead that conversation. So I was dreading the words, like were the words going to come out of my mouth in the order that I wanted them to, and thankfully they did. So as soon as that conversation was over, I did feel lighter. I felt like that weight had been lifted, and I could just start to focus again. So we've spoken about how we need to make sure that we're keeping that, like, I guess, our output's high, our quality of work high, our focus high in our day-to-day roles, but also then transferring that to essentially our second jobs in the evening until we do officially launch. And I feel good for it now. I feel like that focus is there, that energy is there. It's a case of counting down the days now, not in a bad way, but it's just like we're so passionate about what we want to do. We can see where that opportunity sits. Just want to start, I guess, taking some of it off the table, but we can start from now. So that has to be exciting as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me as well, I'd like to know kind of black and white, okay, when are we actually going to be leaving our current jobs and, have that all set. So we've got plenty to still talk about and confirm with the team at our agency at the minute. So that'll be interesting kind of conversations. I'm looking forward to them and how they pan out as well. But yeah, I think thinking about it and like all the chats we've had, we were going through all sorts of scenarios. Classic case of probably overthinking something when actually it was a lot better than we thought it would be. We kind of knew it would be absolutely fine. We weren't kicked out of the office straight away, had laptops handed over and things like that. So yeah, it's the next step, and it's like mapping out the next steps as well that we've got to do. I mean, we're planning that, and I think this is a new journey for both of us, podcasting and kind of charting our journey. So moving forward as well, we're going to be talking about our plans each week and kind of going through what we've achieved and what we're going to go and do essentially in the weeks preceding. So that feels like the very first milestone. So it's good. And it was made doubly real for me today when I got a letter from Companies House saying,
I got
congratulations, you're a director. And that also actually made me feel like, wow, okay, yeah, we're definitely doing this now.
Yeah, I got the same letter. I took a photo of it. I was like, I'm sure this is the first of many letters, but it made it feel real for sure, which is good. I don't know, like the feeling's gone. I do agree. I think it was a classic case of overthinking and expected nothing less in terms of how the conversation went. It was as smooth as any conversation could be. So it's just a case now of going for it. I do think this is hopefully, like, today is case in point as to why we want to do this podcast though. So everybody makes out like doing this is very straightforward, very, like kind of just you have the idea, you seize the idea, you go for it. Next thing you know, your agency's doing $1 million run rate in the first 6 months. We know that isn't the reality. And we know that, like, of all the people, all the agency owners we've spoken to, like, it is nerve wracking at the start. And you do have these, I guess, potential moments of self-doubt or potential moments of like, have I done the right thing? So the fact that we can be open about that and maybe once, twice a week treat this as our own therapy session as well is good. But I do think it as well, we do need to flick that switch now and talk about and focus on why we are doing this. Because like we're not just winging it really, are we? Like I said, like we do have the experience that we have, we've had the exposure that we have, and we have an idea which we believe is different, especially in the markets that we want to go after. So it's time for us to start demonstrating that and show that we haven't just been, I guess, winging it for 10 years. We have been learning, we have been picking up that exposure. And also we've been big drivers of change, right? Like we've implemented a lot of stuff where we are at the moment. And it's time to see if that holds up in different niches, with different target audiences, different ideal customer profiles, all those kind of things. So I'm excited. And as I said yesterday, having this to look back on in a year's time. So when we are like the other agencies doing that mil plus run rate, we can look back and be like, shit, do you remember how we felt the day after we handed in our notice, or the day before, the night before? And just looking back will be fun for us, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think throwing it back to the current kind of workplace, and it's interesting as well because we don't know when the teams are going to be told.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Obviously we lead teams. You lead most of the agency essentially.
Yeah.
I lead the SEO team, and it's difficult when I'm having conversations because inside all I want to do is tell them, And I feel like, I'm sorry, I'm leaving you, but it's not. It's business at the end of the day. But that's where the personal element comes from, because you do generally care about the people, because they are a mega talented team. Hopefully we can build our own mega talented team as well. That's obviously the aim for us. But this is going to be probably the most weird 3 months of the entire journey that we'll go on, I think,
Yeah.
because we're in the grey area now. It's not black and white. It's grey. We're working on two businesses at the same time, and we've just got to kind of go with the flow, because the flow hasn't been set for us yet. So yeah, I think these next 3 months especially, we'll learn more over these next 3 months than we probably will in the rest of our careers.
Yeah, I think it's a balancing act on multiple different levels. I do agree with what you're saying. Like I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with my boss around my potential desire to leave, and I think I said this yesterday as well. Like the biggest thing for me in terms of the staying power was the team that we've built and the people that we work with every day. And naturally, you spend so much time with these people, like you do become friends. Like we're going to one guy's wedding in a couple of weeks, right? With 3, 4 other people from the agency. So it is a huge chunk of our lives, and it's a bunch of very talented people we don't want to leave behind. And those people, if you are listening, feel free to drop us an email. But on a more serious note, like that will be hard, and we are going to have to strike that balance, both in terms of the team, but also in terms of we have to limit that crossover. We don't want to do ill of the company we're working for either. So we need to make sure that crossover is as black and white as it can be in those 3 months. So it's a challenge I'm sure we'll rise to, and we are making good progress on our agency.
Absolutely. And I think, like, for this podcast, I'm kind of almost reminiscing or kind of want to focus in on the current kind of workplace, because also I think one of the biggest challenges for the next 3 months is ensuring we do everything that we can to make sure that the agency is left in the best possible place. The team's looked after, they understand the changes, and we help the agency set up for our departure. Because again, I'm not like bigging us up or anything like that, but it's going to be a bit of a change, because these guys have worked with us for the whole time we've been there. So a lot of them. So it's going to be a bit of a sea change. Some people adapt differently to change, and we can just do the best that we can do to aid that transition for everyone involved, because big believer in win-win situations. So yeah, if we can do that for them and make sure that we can get a good head start on our business, I think that's the ideal kind of outcome from this.
Yeah, I agree. I like it. So we're coming up to the 20-minute mark, which I know when we started recording, we're like, if we can do 20 minutes on this and not repeat ourselves too much, that's probably a pretty good second episode, just chatting how we feel. Spitballing an idea here, Brennan, so feel free to reject it straight off the bat. You
Sure.
normally do. You normally do when I have an idea. So obviously for the next 3 months at least, like even if we're averaging an episode a week, the whole point is building, right? So how do we get from where we are now, which is the seed of an idea with some planning behind it, to launch July, August time, depending on when we depart our agency? How about between each episode, we commit to what we're going to do in that time and see how well we just to hold ourselves accountable and see how well we do. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm quite used to this. You run the DMT at the current workplace, and that's the kind of way that we work there, and it works well. It holds you accountable, make sure that you actually get on with it. I mean, I must admit, sometimes it's like, oh, have I done what I need to do just before the meeting, and you race to do it, but it does hold you accountable. So definitely let's do that. So I'll throw it over to you first. What are you going to commit to over the next week?
Yeah, I think just for some context on that. So this is something that Paddy, who's the co-founder, brought into Era, having read, I read a book that I can't remember the name of, around having like a wildly important goal to work towards, and then having weekly commitments to move you closer to that wildly important goal. So obviously our wildly important goal is very obvious. Launch our agency come July the 1st. And then we'll commit weekly. So I think for me, we're at the stage now where we're starting to really focus on our market positioning, right? So how we best communicate with our ICPs. And as people have probably, if there's anybody listening, realize right now, like we have a tendency to ramble a little bit. We're big believers in effective communication, but when we get together, we just talk, right? Between now and when we speak next, I need to make sure that the person we are working with on this positioning has everything they need. So Brennan, you spent a lot of time working on our ICPs. So we need to get over ICPs. He does need to sign an NDA because we can't have that getting out before then. And we also need to send over the vision and positioning work that we've already done so that we can then start workshopping and moving forward to having, I think, our first objective, which is the tagline that really, in 5 to 7 words, defines who we are and what we do.
Absolutely. Quick question, idea even for you. And again, we're kind of spitballing this podcast as we go along, and
I like it.
The boundaries will change as we go. But would it be interesting to get the person that we've employed to help us with the positioning to join us on our podcast in a week or two?
Oh, I like that idea.
When we get the outcomes.
Oh, maybe we could do both. I'd be very interested to see what he thinks of the work that we've done so far. But that could go one of two ways, right? Like, obviously, we need to make sure that we're marketing ourselves as the professionals, as we will be working with our clients on their ICPs. Yeah. So maybe we can see what he says on those. And if he's not a fan, then we'll just pretend that episode never happened, exactly. And then have one down the road. But yeah, I think that's a really good idea. So how about that as your one commitment between now and next podcast is to see if you can get him to agree to feature on an episode.
Yeah, okay. I will take that. And then between us as well, we need to keep working on our target account list.
Yeah, how's that coming along? What we at? We're not doing too bad. What was our aim? 100 per sector. We're at maybe 25.
Yeah, I think so.
In total, so we're still quite far behind.
Yeah, and it's one of those tasks that, like, when you've got spare 10, 15 minutes, you can go grab a couple of accounts that you want to work with. So I think we need to make progress on that front as well, especially if we want to get our target of kind of 2 to 3 retainers by the time we start. So I think we both need to work on that part as well. And then we've got other bits and pieces in the background, office space potentially, and then all the kind of fun bits like setting up a bank account and stuff, which maybe we'll kind of discuss the process in a later podcast if and when we get to it. So plenty in the pipeline.
I agree. I think there's lots to do, and we'll chart that journey throughout this, I guess, the initial 3 months of this podcast before we move on to what we think this podcast can become as well, which is very much a marketing tool, but more selfishly a learning tool, right? I think we have the objective of getting some agency owners that we have in our network on here, asking them questions, seeing the challenges they face during their first year so that we can learn from those and hopefully accelerate our growth as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be really interesting because my final point is, obviously, we've tried and looked at things like journaling. So I've dabbled in a bit of journaling. This is our journal. And I think that's going to be a really good kind of thing to look back on as well. And obviously share out with people. Hopefully we get a couple of listeners along the way as well. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I think the overriding feeling for me after today is, even though I'm knackered and I was stressed, now it's just excitement for the future.
Yeah, for sure. All right, nice one. I think that's it. Should we leave it there?
Yeah, perfect.
Right, nice one.
To help us build our audience, please like, share and subscribe. If you listened on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a 5-star review. And if you watched us on YouTube, please leave a question or comment and we'll get back to you. Thank you.